They're eating her, and now they're gonna eat me too. Oh my god!
Today, we conclude our spit roast arc of foreplay. Now, we've done all three of our movies already, so you may be wondering, how do we have a fourth movie if we each picked one that we secretly enjoy, or overtly enjoy, I guess, a guilty pleasure perhaps, and the other two will hate it. And we've done all three of ours, but of course, we have to bring in this show's arch nemesis, Roger Ebert.
Indeed.
In order to provide the fourth film of this arc. And what that means, guys, is that we have selected a movie, 500 Days of Summer, that he gave a 4-star glowing review to, which I'm sure we're about to quote on this show, courtesy of Richard.
Absolutely.
And
have it ready.
We all hate this movie. We've all seen it before. We all watched it. We all suffered through this again to watch this episode. I wish I had never seen this movie again. It was terrible. I watched it one more time. We will get to that in just a moment. But first, we've got to announce our next arc. And we thought, well, we have this spit roast idea, so why don't we just reverse it and each of us picks a very famous and commercially viable and successful film that hopefully the others will actually like. So we're going to the very tip top of the box office and fame, big time directors, big time successes, and still generally pretty well, I would say, critically responsive and generally considered good films. So with that in mind, we are going to, look, if we called this Spit Roast and we call the show Foreplay, we have to call this next one Moneyshot. Obviously, it's the natural conclusion that one reaches. And I'm going to go ahead and reverse my Michael Crichton take, which is I picked the 13th Warrior based off of the Michael Crichton book, Eaters of the Dead, for this arc. So I'm just going to straight up take Jurassic Park. What are you guys picking? What's our second film, Thorin?
Well, technically, I've also reversed my pick because I did a gangster film in a way in Revolver, and I'm just going to do the best ever, Godfather 1, because I just thought it's obviously a film where everyone thinks they've watched it, but actually I think maybe the new generation probably haven't got to it, so you can't go wrong watching it either. It's just a fabulous film with an amazing cast, so yeah, let's watch Godfather 1.
Quite revealing that me and Duncan have both selected gangster films as our pick. I'm going to go with Scorsese's Goodfellas. I think I might eat, as much as I love The Godfather, I might even make the case that I believe Goodfellas is the superior film in that genre because I think it has a more truthful ring to the kind of fall of the nobility within organized crime, if indeed that ever existed. It was probably a myth. But yeah, it's comfort food, that movie. It's one of those films where every time it's on TV, when I'm channel hopping, I sit there transfixed and can't change the channel. And there are very few films you can say that about. Certainly not 500 Days of Summer, that's for sure.
And of course, we will also have a Roger Ebert selection.
Yes,
and
he's got a chance to redeem himself. He doesn't deserve it from beyond the grave.
So we went and looked up on his website. There is a list of his top 10 movies ever. And on that list is Casablanca. And Casablanca is another film that's an all-time great. I dearly love Casablanca myself. It is
also a love story, like
also a love story. It's Humphrey Bogart at his most Humphrey Bogartiest. It was a smash success, but it was kind of accidentally a success. Very interestingly, like it was a pretty low budget movie that the studio, I believe it was Warner Brothers, did not think that was going anywhere, and it suddenly became a phenomenon that has lasted until this day and is still considered one of the greatest films of all time. So Casablanca is where we're going with our fourth and final movie. But we have to get to Roger Ebert's absolutely terrible takes on 500 Days of Summer first. And I don't know where you guys want to begin with this one, because I hate this movie. I hate the actors. I hate the writing. I hate the concept. I hate the culture in which it springs from in 2009, because this is directly like my life experience of being, 20 something in 2009. I was 23. And And I lived in this culture that was going crazy for these movies like Garden State and 500 Days of Summer. 500 Days of Summer is apparently still considered a cult classic, which disgusts me that people watch this and think it's like a hidden gem.
My joke would be, this movie is for women and young, like teenagers and young adult women, what like a ridiculously like sexist male movie would be with just all oiled asses and like, fuck yeah. It's like I can't actually see how a man would enjoy this film. Like, I'm being serious. If you can relate to the character, like what's funny is I could, in the sense I was sort of a bit like this in the worst time in my life before I actually sort of like leveled up and understood things like, don't just let people essentially like string you along and treat you for less than your value. And don't waste your time chasing after people who aren't into you. So one thing I would say is, I think actually, I'm going to go later in some deep like psychological. I think this movie is actually, it's not just a bad film. Like, people will think it's just an innocuous bad film and you just don't like it. No, like I actually think the message is almost like life de-affirming. It's almost poison. Like spiritually bankrupt as a film. I think actually, if you enjoy this film,
poison.
So also, by the way, one area I have to say at the outset, because it'll just set the tone, is like, bro, you would actually believe that the idea for this film didn't come from like the story, the life, the actors. You would think the person just sat there smoking weed and went, this Spotify playlist is the shit. How could I get every single one of these insanely cliched tracks into and no joke, not only are there a million tracks, which even in isolation are sometimes good, they're used in the most hackneyed way ever. And this is the craziest thing, Richard. Sometimes it feels like he's just jump cutting 30 seconds of a track into the next one, into the next one. You're like, this is it. It's just an unlimited.
There's not a scene.
Soundtrack. It's mad. It's mad.
There's not a scene in this movie that doesn't have a song in the background or the characters singing in it.
Right.
There's like no, like any momentary crumb of like dialogue that doesn't have like diegetic music in it or whatever. It's like, it's so rare and fleeting. I mean, when I was doing my notes for the show, I literally wrote down the director. What I said about him was, quote, Marc Webb, this cunt didn't make a movie, he made a mixtape.
There you go. Yes. Perfect.
Right,
which also fits the theme of this era. By the way, the joke is, if you haven't watched the film yet, like, all I'll say is this isn't in the film, but the only way he could have made it worse is if, like, at a moment of like success, the guy had just turned around and it was like, running all up Salisbury Hill. It's like, these are the most hackneyed songs of all time. Like, you've also heard even the good ones have been heard 1 million times, a million times over. Like, they're just played to death.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I'll be honest with you guys, now that it hasn't happened, I was terrified of this episode because I remembered how bad it was and how I recoiled in horror from the movie. And just for a little bit of context,
I thought you were going to like it. I bet
well, yeah, I was shown this movie. I was back when I was in my late 20s. And therefore, sadly, working in esports, but you hadn't had the soul and life totally sucked from me by the industry at that point. And I also had aspirations of going on to do something, you know, better. Like maybe one day I'll write for a serious newspaper or something. It's okay, like that.
Richard. We're working on your film critic arc right now. It's going well. It's going well.
Yeah, I think so. And so. I fucking remember distinctly, I was a media twat, you know, like 1 foot in at esports, 1 foot out, and I was dating another media twat, and she wrote for a magazine, and we were dating, and I was like so adamant in my brain, right? This is the shit. I'm a media twat. She's a media twat. We'll probably maybe one day have media twat kids. It'll be fucking great. But we'll probably move to London, you know, and fucking live there with all the other media twats. And anyway, she twatted me up big time by saying, "Oh, you've got to see this film. It's one of my favorites."
What's genius is you essentially had the meta experience of the film.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Being forced to watch
not as much as Monty as we'll get to.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Basically, she twatted me up by recommending me this film, and I had to pretend to like it. I detested this film immediately. I was like, None of this is real. None of this is likable. What world even is this? And I'm a media twat saying this. And he's a bigger twat than me in the movie. And she's a twat, a bigger twat than you. How could anyone like this film? But I couldn't say that because I had twat dreams. So I love it. I love it. And anyway, I had to watch this movie a bunch in that relationship until we broke up in a really horrible way. It was like, and so the only thing I remember from that relationship, apart from the terrible, painful, really nasty breakup, was this film. And so I was terrified of watching it to think, what if I just think the film's bad because of that association? And what if I've changed? And what if I've mellowed? And I think the bad film recommended by the media twat, what if I think it's good? How am I going to look Duncan in the eye? How am I going to look Monty in the eye on that episode if I go, oh, actually, it wasn't that bad, you know? And no, thank the Lord. This film has aged worse. It is aged worse than I remember it. This film, it is nothing to nobody. It fulfills absolutely none of its stated goals. The characters are unlikable.
If you're a sadist, like I say, if you're a female sadist, you might actually like this movie. It's just about essentially instead of a butterfly, you're torturing a man with pins, you know.
But here's the mad part about it. I think in this film as well, the way they've written it is sort of all weird because you're meant to. I think by the end, am I meant to like Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character? But here's the mad part: Zooey, is it Zooey or Zoe?
Zooey Deschanel, yeah.
But it is spelled Zooey, isn't it? Which is another thing that I don't like. Just to get that out of the way,
I really just dislike her.
Yeah, no. I mean, but the good news is we'll get to a little bit later on. This film is such a layer cake of failure for almost everyone involved. Joseph Gordon-Levitt being the exception. Yep. It sent her back to television for fucking 7 years or whatever. So anyway, she's written like the male character, I think, and I don't want to get into trouble with segregated gender roles and traditional norms and all.
I know what you mean. Essentially, I was going to say this. Essentially, what you quickly realize is the whole premise of the movie is it's inverted gender roles.
Yes.
And instead of the woman being the one that wants the relationship, he's the one that's led on.
But then it doesn't stick the landing because she turns around at the end and
it just invalidates everything.
You'll summarize this. Yeah, and literally the whole premise is like she is the free spirit, and why shouldn't she be? Why do men want to control women and put them in boxes? Why she gets to dictate everything all of the time, even sometimes when it's unreasonable. Although I will say Joseph Gordon-Levitt is an absolute insufferable fucking loser in this film.
Surely you can't relate to him beyond 20 minutes, boys. Come on.
But also he's in his 20s and he's behaving like this. This is the other part I don't understand.
It's like he's 17 in it, yeah.
If that, bro, like, I mean, they even make jokes about like his roommates going, the last person you dated was in 7th grade and it lasted 3 hours.
When I was like 15 minutes into the film, I wrote, this is a 14-year-old girl's idea of a good movie. Then the scene happens where the girl just inexplicably makes out with him at work. And then I put possibly 14-year-old boys movie. And then I idea beyond that. At that point, I'm just lost, mate. I'm just lost.
And just also as well, just before we do the summary, I just want to say I don't understand. Like, so when you create, because it's wrong to call this a romantic comedy. It's not a romantic comedy. It doesn't fill any of the plot beats of it. But I mean, certainly, it's barely a comedy. It's not overly romantic in its messaging. It doesn't fit the traditional structure for that. It's more of a coming-of-age story, but the characters in it are pushing 30. Like, you should have already have come of age. This is a fucking Stand By Me, where it's a bunch of kids going down to the river to poke a fucking corpse with a stick and realize the futility of, transitioning out of childhood into adulthood. So this movie, it just doesn't do any of it. It just doesn't do anything it is supposed to do. And as I said, I was left watching it as we lurched from scene to scene, where this film has pretensions of being a Woody Allen movie for hipster trash in America, when in fact it has none of the fucking astute writing, none of the broad comedy beats. It's just absolutely
you are right as well.
Terrible.
You can't even call it a romantic comedy. It has no. Remember, you have romantic comedies with like fucking Vince Vaughn in, who's like a funny guy. This doesn't have a laugh. The whole thing, I'm waiting and I'm going, where's the gag? Like, that's not even funny. Do even hipsters think that's funny? You know what I mean?
But it also...
the ending also is completely redundant. If you couldn't already... Essentially, the ending just goes, let's just break down the whole film, shall we? Like, what?
But the other part that I hate about the film is, right, so one of the things it's trying to copy is the Woody Allen style. What Woody Allen would do is Woody Allen would do this thing where he was simultaneously very often the narrator and the protagonist of the film. And so he would stop in the middle of a scene and look at a camera and do a voiceover. Now, this movie has a totally redundant voiceover that it doesn't need to be in the movie. And it's so literally saying things. Yeah, it's literally saying things in the scene. I can intuit it. He's acting with his face. I can intuit it.
That's not true, Richard. It does do one very not important thing, which is the only time it doesn't actually tell you what's the narrator, which just is there sometimes, but not. It seems like randomly placed throughout the movie, unnecessarily, as you're saying most of the time. The one time it gives us additional information was when we get a cutaway flashback to Zooey Deschanel apparently being like Helen of Troy levels of hot, where she's, it's talking about how everyone stares at her on the bus.
And her round-trip commute to work averaged 18.4 double takes per day. It was a rare quality, this summer effect. Rare and yet something every post-adolescent male has encountered at least once in their lives.
And she worked in Michigan.
So
she worked at an ice cream shop and the sales went up. And so there's this one moment where we get that cutaway, but it never ever happens any other time. And not only that, but why are we getting told that she is just so ridiculously attractive? Because it just sets up all these other questions, such as why the hell is she with Tom, this complete loser? After moving to Los Angeles, if she's like an absolute 10 out of 10, which, by the way, using our eyes, we can tell she also isn't that. So,
right. But also, right, on top of that, right, and this is another thing about the movie that I think it fucking just gets wrong repeatedly. So you have this voiceover in, but again, what Woody Allen would do is he would have a surreal moment of comedy, which was so obviously not really happening, right? But it would be set up. It's very grounded. It's very realistic. Woody Allen would look to the camera and go, it kind of reminds me of like what happened to Jesus Christ with the Romans or something. And then fucking the scene will play out, and then it'll be like that, right? And it isn't happening. He set it up. Right? This movie doesn't do that. Like, what about the scene when he thinks he's going to get fired because Summer's left the office and he's a bit sad, and the guy who from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. picks up the card and goes, because he works as a gift card writer, of course, because this is the most ridiculous fucking conceptualization of American life I've ever seen since fucking Happy Days, right? He works as a gift card writer, and he says, you see, I think you're a bit depressed because you wrote this, and it was roses are red, violets are blue, fuck you, whore.
Lately, your work performance has been a little off.
I'm not following.
Okay, here's something that you wrote last week. Roses are red, violets are blue, fuck you, whore.
Again, not a gag.
Right. And then he puts it down.
Funny.
Then he puts it down and he goes, what I want you to do. So anyway, I'm going to move you off gift cards and we're going to put you in these. And he hands him a list of like funerals and bereavement cards. And he's going, it's perfect for where you're at mentally. Nothing to live for.
Funerals and sympathy.
Misery, sadness, loss of faith, no reason to live. This is perfect for you. Good, okay. Now back to work you go.
Suicidal ideation. And I'm just watching this going, okay, but obviously this is meant to be a surreal thing that isn't actually happening. But the problem with that is...
that, boss.
Yeah, so or maybe he is really doing that, right? But I think it is meant to be a surreal moment to kind of show how, you know, because it's inappropriate and a boss wouldn't talk to you that way, but it's to reflect his mindset. But then the problem with that is there are so many other moments that happen in the movie that are meant to be real, but are equally surreal. Like how they have that thing where they go to like IKEA and they pretend that they're like living in a 1950s utopia, you know, version of their family with the kids at the table, and she's cooking him fake dinners, and they get into a bed at night and they're lying down, and then he just goes, "Oh, I don't want to alarm you, but there's a Chinese family in our bedroom," and it's just a Chinese family staring at him.
Darling, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's a Chinese family in our bathroom.
Like, this is what passes for comedy in this movie. And it is an absolute tonal nightmare that it's like this guy who I'm gonna absolutely eviscerate later on, Marc Webb, because he is the ultimate fear. I mean, this is, like I said, it's a layer cake of failure. You can't believe how much hackery went into this movie. It's unbelievable. But like, it's like he watched like fucking, you know, Annie Hall or whatever, but didn't understand what made it good and went, well, if I just do that. But no, Woody Allen is a super intelligent fucking comedic writer who also is incredibly neurotic. So the comedy and his views on life all get in, and the life he leads all gets like interwoven, you know, so it all has substance. It's relatable. None of this is relatable. Like, I don't even know who could relate to this film. Like, who watches this and goes,
well,
"Oh yeah,
I can tell you
that just like me, for real, for real." Well, yeah, this is
That's
where you
it
get
gets
jealous.
stuck already, Richard.
It
So
was
it's
you,
war.
for real, for real.
I mean,
war.
I can tell you, because I think that where we have to transition with this movie now is the time period in which it came out. And unfortunately, I was in the middle of this, all of this shit culturally that was happening in America. And you guys obviously weren't in the States at the time, but when I was, this was 2009 was the year that I graduated from college. Okay. So I went to a Northeastern, you know, a liberal arts college in New York, where all of this hipster culture was everything. It was everything. And it was all happening. Now, this movie takes place in LA, but the epicenter of hipster culture in the 2000s was a borough of New York City in Brooklyn, like a neighborhood in the borough of Brooklyn called Williamsburg. And that is where I lived, basically when this, like a year after this movie was released. And I was definitely on the later end, and a lot of what you would consider the scene had kind of been priced out of Williamsburg. North Williamsburg, I lived in South Williamsburg, so it was still sort of there, but a lot of it had like pushed out to like Bushwick or Bed-Stuy, so it was kind of moving, like the hipster scene was kind of moving away from Manhattan and like further east on Long Island at that point in time. But basically all of the nerdy intellectual college cultures were really trapped in this hipster aesthetic. And you guys can look up hipster and what that means. The word itself has been diluted, but effectively what it was it was a huge indie rock scene that really derived from, honestly, like kind of unlistenable music at times. If you guys want to hear some like hot trash that was very popular, look up the band called the Unicorns, which you have probably never heard of, to get a sense of this. But there were some bands that kind of hit the mainstream out of this era, like the Arcade Fire was a huge one.
It was grunge for white middle class kids who would never touch drugs in their life.
That's not true. We definitely didn't touch drugs, but
I don't count weed as a drug.
No.
I'm talking about you never putting a belt round your arm. You have a joint.
True.
You have a joint on the weekend, and
a bump.
You won't shut the fuck up about coffee beans.
Yes.
That's who that was.
This was the time period where a lot of people were like wearing flannel and, you know, having handlebar mustaches and man buns and like smoking pipes. You know what I mean? Hand rolling cigarettes. And the whole thing about this was that it was almost a battle of who could be more obscure in your tastes, right? So if you liked something that was too popular, it was about being quirky. right? It was about challenging social conventions, but not in a really exciting way like the 1960s, in literally the dumbest way possible, which is exactly what Zooey Deschanel's character does in this film. And it's why this movie is so banal, because it's the safest way you can kind of challenge conventions, right?
Yeah.
And it's boring.
Only to then capitulate and lean into conventions.
But exactly, because Richard, it was always insincere,
which,
and it was
which
always,
funny enough,
it was always
all
ironic.
the hipsters did in the end.
It was all irony.
In the end.
It was.
Yeah, they're all voting Republican now, probably.
Of course, it was all basically just being ironic to become cool. And like the more disaffected you were and the more niche your interests and the more quirky your tastes, the cooler you were. So I lived in the middle of this because it surrounded me both at college and then later when I moved to New York City. And look, there were some fun parties like that I went to, and there's some interesting bands and, you know, artwork that I saw at that time period. But on the whole, I really disliked these people. And a lot of it was, you know, the music is a part of this in the same way that if you watch Garden State, which is still a bad movie, but better than this one, it is flush with the Shins, the band. The Shins were a huge band in this kind of, you know, in this subculture at the time. And the problem with this, and you ask, who would like this? And the answer is these people, because it is a very inoffensive stab at like traditional relationships in a way that people pretended was interesting at the time. Or maybe some people really did think it was interesting, but it ends up being, you know, not even a really good exploration of that, because everything is subverted at the end and you just go back to normal society. And these were very, for the most part, privileged white kids that were engaging in this society.
I mean, whatever. It's all good. Whatever.
Well, I was gonna look. This is exactly what we need Froscarin to come back and critique this movie. It is.
We spawned her, mate.
It's such an insanely white film, and I can't process it. I can't process like who creates a movie like this and thinks this is a real reflection of real life. I mean,
because,
again,
no, but
there's so many.
Richard, it was because these
people...
but
not like this. Like this guy, he's 1 minute he's saying, "Oh, I got so drunk in a bar and I threatened to burn it down and I threw up on the floor," and it's like, "Oh, they'll totally never let you back in." Yeah, they totally wouldn't actually in real life. You get the shit kicked out here. But no, it's a quirky hipster world, so he's
exactly.
Hipster.
Well, that's actually the thing is though. That's almost where I'd push back. I'd almost say I have no idea who Marc Webb is. This almost feels like when one of those black racists describes what they imagine it's like to have white privilege. Like, yeah, and then you can just like punch someone and sick on the floor and they don't even go to prison. It's like, what are you talking about? That never existed. Like, mate, the bouncer kicks your head off the curb and takes your money. Like, no, I know what you mean. It's almost like a mad caricature of it.
But then, yeah, and he's just in there, in like the next scene, singing karaoke, which, by the way, again, everyone's just there, like, listening.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm proud to be America, where at least I know I'm free. And I'm like,
we're all having a great time. Well, you obnoxiously drunkenly sing. Yeah, exactly.
There's no way. They drag you for that crook from vaudeville, mate.
Yeah, I know. It's so berserk. Like, it's so aggressive in how...
Let me tell you, Richard, like, I'll tell you some stories of, like, real people I knew from this scene. So, for example, you ask...
It wasn't like this.
Yes, it was, Richard. It was bad. I'm telling you, these were people I knew. So, for example here, Richard, there was a guy that I knew who was, like, actually a pretty good musician, okay? But he was holding down some banal job. He actually became, later on, a touring guitarist for one of these, like, very hipster bands that has since completely fallen into obscurity. But he was never part of the main band. He was just a touring musician with them, right? And he would go on endlessly, and these were real conversations about how afraid he was to get in a relationship because it would mean that he couldn't have sex with other people. And not that he was having sex with a lot of people, but just the fear of the possibility of not being able to have sex with another person was causing him to back out of, like, being in relationships at all. It was, I mean, these people were very fucking weird.
Here's what I would stop this film.
Yeah.
I would say I agree with Richard. The weirdest thing about this movie is if you actually love it when you're 16, maybe even 20, you know what? You just haven't matured. You haven't had experience in life. You maybe watch too many Hollywood movies. You believe in the fantasy of the incorrect incentives they tell you exist in the dating market. You haven't, maybe you are a male feminist. Maybe you have just some ideas I don't agree with and I don't vibe with in this point in my life. If you are over the age of 25 and you vibe with this movie, bro, you're a fucking loser, because this is like a caricature of what a 15-year-old thinks an adult romance would be like. Like, think about this. Yeah. How does he initially get into this girl, right? First of all, aside from the fact as a man, he's falling in love at first sight. That is already utterly absurd. I've never even seen that in a film before. I've never seen a film where someone really, as a man, like, again, this is inverted gender roles. It's famous that women have sometimes said, and I saw him walking, I just somehow knew. I've never heard of that. Never heard in real life, not in a movie, in real life, a man say that. Then even more mad, he's into the Smiths, by the way. That's not even vaguely an obscure hipster band. Like, every person knew that fucking band. Everyone. And also,
you had to like bands like the Smiths is the thing, because the older bands were the ones that it was acceptable to be popular, you know, to like them if they were popular. And the Smiths were inspirational for a lot of these indie rock bands. It was the contemporary bands that you had to like the really obscure.
Bro.
Just telling you what it was like, man.
I'm just in the cure. History is, man, a fact. I've factually got that one. So anyway, literally, he is then unironically, like a 14-year-old girl would, going, oh my God, she's into the same band I am. A really famous one. She's so cool.
You have good taste in music.
You like the Smiths?
Yeah. To die by your side is such a heavenly way to die. I love them.
Holy shit.
That's like what a 14-year-old girl says about the guy at school who like has the t-shirt on. And then also the entire premise of this movie, by the way, here's why, even though, look, it's not like one thing I do hate is when people take this linear approach to logic, where if you did one thing fucked up in the earlier chain of logic they disagree with, you deserve everything you get. No, because people can be naive, make mistakes. They can do minor bad things, which then later have much worse consequences that maybe aren't proportionate. But the very fact that this person doesn't even start. Here's the thing. This movie would make so much more sense and have something to it if it didn't have the ending and it was just a mystery what happened to her. And on the other side, it didn't have like this silly intro. In fact, they do have a whirlwind week-long romance where they are in love, and then she realizes, I don't want the relationship. Because the idea, she tells him at the outset, essentially, I don't believe in love on any level, and also I don't want a relationship. And look, we can essentially, you're essentially the first man ever to be in the friends with benefit zone. You're actually in that zone. And she repeatedly tells him, you're in that zone. And by the way, because of that, eventually, inevitably, I'm going to also lose interest and maybe even see other people. And then he's doing that thing where he himself is the moody one, sort of like, oh, I'm going then.
No, don't pull that with me. Don't even try to. This is not how you treat your friend. Kissing in the copy room, holding hands in IKEA, shower sex? Come on, friends my balls.
What are we? Again, it's like, it's so mad. That's why I said part of me almost thought this was written by like a black feminist woman who hates what she thinks is the nerdcore white privileged man, because also they've put that aspect in there. That's what the woman always says. That's the famous thing about, well, what are we? I need to clarify the relationship. I need to know, is there a commitment here? This mental, it's such a train wreck, because here's the thing, 85% of the like psychic damage this guy takes in this movie is completely self-induced. In fact, he willingly dives into the pit of snakes over and over again, and then gets out, and he's just out, and he's like, back in I go. And it's like, that's why I say, like, by the end, it's almost like you actually, like, it's like I said, my joke before we started is this is like a fucking cock simulator. It's like, you just feel what it would like to be one and just get completely wrecked. Like, I don't get it. But I don't get like the spiritual core of the film. It's meant
I love it, because not only is he diving back into the pit of snakes, but he actually is inflicting further psychic damage on himself through daydreaming, right? Which is, it makes it even funnier in the end.
Yeah,
but like being genius. I actually thought to myself, if someone genius did this, like a Woody Allen or someone in the modern day, Charlie Kaufman, if they did a film where it's split in a timeline and it had the reality and the expectations, you could do so much with that. This was trash. This was actually one of the shittest uses of what actually seemed like a novel idea I've ever seen. It's one of the worst alternate timeline / fantasy versions I've ever. It was just fucking stupid, wasn't it? I know, it's so bad. It's so bad.
I mean, the thing is that this film doesn't have a bad concept, which is, you know, the 500 days of a relationship, and it's told out of order, so you're seeing snapshots in the relationship. And it does have, I think, creative moments like the expectation versus reality scene, where it's his daydream versus what's actually happening. All the concepts are not heinous in and of themselves. It's the subject matter and the writing that makes this horrible.
Well, here's how I'll prove to you the concept itself isn't heinous. There are elements from this film that you will find in the excellent and one of my favorite movies, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes, that's the good version of this, by the way. The Charlie Kaufman version of this is actually a very good movie.
we know that there's aspects to it, like telling a relationship out of time, starting with the end, looking back at the key moments, to two people that have like unrealistic expectations. I mean, the irony there being that film is probably more melancholic, but has the happier ending. Right? This film, nobody wins in this movie. I like, because so. What ends up happening at the end, as we've alluded to, is right. So he goes to see, they're on a break or whatever, or they've broke up. He sees her months after, right, and he sees she's got an engagement ring on, and she's getting married, and he realizes that like all the stuff she said to him about how, you know, I'm just not that kind of girl. I don't believe in love. I don't believe in the idea of a one. I don't believe in love at first sight. All of these like twee concepts you're bringing to my table, I just don't think any of them are real, and I don't even in this relationship. So you are setting yourself up for a fall. And he goes, but I can change her. I will work with it. No, none of that happens. She ends up marrying someone else. And then in one of their last meetings, she turns around and says, I didn't think it would happen to me, but it did. All I kept thinking was, you were right.
It was meant to be. And I just kept thinking, Tom was right.
No.
Yeah, I did. I did.
So let's be clear, right? He's been absolutely fucking wrecked because the big block in their relationship was that she didn't believe in any of the concepts she now believes in, but believes in with somebody else. She has had her entire personality destroyed, like just irreparably broken down, because this thing she didn't believe in has objectively happened to her now, and she's just going to go and become the thing that she thought was so terrible just to be someone else's partner, right? And then you think, okay, that's bad enough. Just leave it there on the bench. I hope you're truly happy. Walks away, you do some callback to The Graduate, whatever you want to do, right? But no, then they add this other scene. This other fucking scene where he finally goes to interview for his dream job, and he's sat in the line. He's talking.
This has a line I'm ready for. Go on.
Yeah, and he sat talking to somebody else who is there to interview for the same dream job, and they both joke, hope you don't get the job. And then the voiceover comes in and going, even though he felt something instantly for this girl, he knew from his lessons with Summer that serendipity and destiny were not real concepts, so he said nothing and did nothing and just walked away.
If Tom had learned anything, it was that you can't ascribe great cosmic significance to a simple earthly event. Coincidence. That's all anything ever is. Nothing more than coincidence.
He starts going into the interview, and then he comes back, he goes, 1 minute, and he goes, listen, after this, can we get a cup of coffee? And she goes, I'm already meeting friends. And he goes, fuck it then. And then she goes, no, okay. Suddenly, I will take the risk with you. And he goes, hi, nice to meet you. And she goes, hi, my name's Autumn.
My name's Tom.
Nice to meet you. I'm Autumn.
And then it just goes back to
do you see what they did there?
Tomatoes at the fucking
and then the counter goes back to 1, right? And then it starts playing, she got you high, you don't even know it. Like some hipster garbage, right? And it's like, no, but like, he learned nothing. He learned nothing.
But
he learned absolutely nothing. He has not developed. He's just dating someone with another seasonal thematic name. And in 500 days, he'll meet some bitch called Winter in a goth bar. I can't do it. I won't do it.
I'd be kind of into that sequel,
ridiculous.
actually.
By the way, the other thing as well is the cast is terrible in this film. Like Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I think has always been overrated.
No one had a career after it except Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
He's not even good in this. It is a one-note shit performance that looks like he's on like every SSRI in the world as an actor. Like he's not even. There's no range. Also, it has some of the most. Like the joke is one of the only good actresses is that fucking child actress like Zooey, Chloe, whatever.
Yeah,
she's
which
barely
still
in it.
shouldn't exist in the movie. Why?
She also
Why is
plays
he?
the character. By the way, they've done this in other movies since, but she essentially plays the character that would normally be like Morgan Freeman or something in a film like this.
Yeah, no,
and it has that moment where they think it's funny. You could only do this in the 90s and 2000s. You think it's a really great gag to have a little girl go, "Don't be a pussy," in the same way as if grandma in the SNL's listening to Tupac is like, "The juxtaposition's crazy." That's hacky as fuck already.
Coach, we're not done here.
Look, it's easy, Tom. Just don't be a pussy.
Then there's the whole thing where think about this. By the way, he doesn't even clock this because he's a fucking cretin. Because because they have a narrator, because they have a breakdown later, because every scene is unpacking, literally explicating what he's doing. You can never miss a beat of this movie, by the way. It's impossible. I agree, by the way. I actually looked at one point. Is this 3 hours long? How long is it? Anyway, there's one point, no joke, where she catches the bouquet at a wedding.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
And then also Zooey Deschanel, right? Obviously, this is the zenith of her most truly evil powers, because she just exists, as far as I can tell, to be the chaotic pixie energy girl, quirky.
Manic pixie dream girl.
Oh, she's really just, I did my version of it. She's just an 18-year-old, but is she? She's sort of in a 28-year-old's body, and she still likes things, and she'll give you like a hand job over it, but she's cool about it. And that, like, what the fuck? Like, this is the worst version of her ever doing this. Like, she's actually literally, even though she's quite beautiful in real life, she's actually just like a horrendous dog shit character in this one. Like, and she's another one-note performance. It's the same from beginning to end. No depth, no cheer. And the side actors that are his friends shouldn't even be on TV, bro. They are fucking bad at their jobs. They're appallingly bad.
I think when we talk about the concept of the manic pixie dream girl, this term came up maybe to describe this movie. I remember it started floating around in like the 2000s or
I've heard it before. Let's see if I can find its origins. I'm quickly looking. Do continue.
Yeah, so the concept of the manic pixie dream girl was very much associated with hipsterdom during this period, because these young women were really weirdly idolized. And I'm not saying these people were real, but in a bunch of these movies, like again, Garden State goes there. And it's not like they invented this for hipsters. Like in my mind, this goes back to shit like Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is another movie that I really hate.
You could even say the woman in fucking Scott Pilgrim's like this. It's the same fucking type, isn't it?
Correct.
You know?
Correct. So it was the manic pixie dream girl was this concept of this kind of unavailable, mysterious, alluring, high energy, quirky, yet like quirky in like still a kind of safe way, but one that pushes you outside of your boundaries a little bit, which is, or maybe enables you in certain ways, because this character, she doesn't even really have a personality within this film. Her only job, it appears to be within this movie, her only character's only function is to drive the male character crazy, be apparently the most erotic human being on earth, like Helen of Troy, and then also to like push him into his dream job of being an architecture, right? An architect.
Yeah, I hear how safe it is though as well. It's not even a manic version.
I mean, the manic one is like the manic one is like in Breakfast at Tiffany's with Catherine Hepburn.
But when I think about like real manic people that I fucking dated in my life, there's like danger to it. That's what makes it kind of alluring, because they can actually put you in insanely dangerous situations. Like they start arguments with people and then like gesture to you like you need to get involved, and it's like it's your bullshit. They take you to weird places. They wake you up in the middle of the night and say, "I've got this urge to fucking do this crazy thing," or I actually want to go get like some shit from my ex-boyfriend's house. Like, I'm gonna go break in. Will you fucking drive me? And you're going like,
but that's because,
I must quit this. But it's so alluring.
But
There's
like
none
I
of that
said,
here.
hipsterdom was never actually dangerous at any point in time. There was nothing dangerous about this aesthetic or about this subculture. So this is as dangerous as it gets. But there was really a fantasy within this subculture about the manic pixie dream girl at the time.
Well, do you want to know who the first one was? I've just looked it up.
Who?
It was Kirsten Dunst. It was the first. This is where the term comes from. Elizabethtown.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
The movie Elizabethtown, which was directed by Cameron Crowe, another fucking hack. The film critic Nathan Rabin coined the term in 2007 when reviewing the 2005 film Elizabethtown. He said the Dunst character embodies a type I like to call the manic pixie dream girl, a character who exists solely in the fevered imaginations of sensitive writer-directors to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. So shout out to Nathan Rabin. That's a
great description, and that's what her purpose is within this movie. And like, look, I'm about to say some hurtful things towards Zooey Deschanel that are not really her fault. It's just I hate her. Okay, and do I know her? She might be a lovely person.
Watching this again,
but let me just put it this way: like every time she appears on screen, I don't know what it is. It's the fact that she feels like she doesn't have a soul. Whenever I'm looking at her, she feels like a robot wearing a human skin. Her eyes are a little bit too open. She's always like so dry and understated. She doesn't seem to know where she is a lot of the time. And she seems to just be the real world that's supposed to be around her, that she's supposed to be interacting with. It seems like she's just talking to somebody in her own dream. It's fucking weird. I find her creepy.
I love it.
Like, I find her very disturbing. And so the fact that she is the object of affection in this film and I have this reaction to her just makes me hate this film even more. It just makes me hate it even more because I just hate her. I hate her character, and I hate the way she plays her character, and I hate her screen presence. I hate the way she delivers her lines. I hate her face. I hate everything.
The irony is she does as well. On the Wikipedia page about the manic pixie dream girl, it says that when she was interviewed in 2022, so quite recently, and was asked about that manic pixie dream girl label that she got from this film, she said she hated it and said that it's not accurate because, first of all, I'm not a girl, I'm a woman. Always love that line. It doesn't hurt my feelings, but it's a way of making a woman one-dimensional, and I'm not one-dimensional. And she said that actually, after doing this film, that label followed her through to the present day for the rest of her career. It's like, you do have agency in not having to accept this part.
I mean, she did this. She played this role in TV as well. The new girl was all of this. She was a manic pixie dream girl for years.
She had to do New Girl after this movie. That's what I'm saying. This movie also fucking sent her back to television, man.
Also, what I hate about this was that, so she was very famous at the time because she was involved in all of the indie rock scene because she was married to Ben Gibbard from Death Cab for Cutie and the Postal Service, which were big bands in this subculture, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, listen.
By the way, listen to this. Just listen to what the top line on her IMDb profile is. It's like some PR Hollywood guy nightmare fuel. It just says, Zooey Deschanel's quirky charm, striking blue eyes, and distinctively offbeat humor have made her one of the most beloved indie darlings of recent decades. That guy's even a hack. Did Marc Webb write that? Like that is fucking mental. Is her life like part of the movie? What is this?
I mean,
but
so
she was the poster girl for like hipster films or like hipster media, because of her real life relationship as well.
There's been many such cases like Garden State and all this, on and on it goes. But here's the thing. As this one is uniquely awful. I ain't got a problem with fucking, quirky hipster love stories, people trying to work out differences. I also don't have a problem, by the way, with romantic movies that don't have happy endings and they don't live happily ever after. It's more reflective and realistic. What I have a problem with is, as I said, this movie fails at everything it tries, right? It tries to be a comedy. It's not funny. It tries to be profoundly insightful about relationships. It doesn't even write the characters correctly. It tries to be a film. Well, from where I'm from, films tell a story and the characters in it have these things called arcs. They don't literally end up right back at the beginning or the total inverse of who, like, oh, now I don't believe the things I've believed for the entirety of the movie. Any elaboration on that, love? No. With the movie ends here. Like, she can't criticize how this film fucking harmed her career. Like, you read the script, you chose to be in it. I mean, like, you know, that's what I mean. You have agency in this. And by the way, as Duncan rightly pointed out, all of the other people who were in this movie, like, they just don't have careers after this. But they just don't. But what I want to tunnel in on is Marc Webb, the director, and Scott Neustadtler and Michael H. Weber, the writers. We'll start with Marc Webb, right? Now, Marc Webb, after this, and I remember it because I was there at the time and had the media twat girlfriend that wouldn't shut the fuck up about it, right? He was earmarked for greatness after this film. This film, by the way, is inexplicably critically acclaimed, 7.7 on IMDb. I want you to think about that if you've watched the movie and you're watching this now, and you've seen some of the ones that had 6.8s and 6.9s, a 7.7 on IMDb. Loads of awards, loads of writers' awards when this is terrible. Anyway, Marc Webb started out, he used to do fucking videos for bands. He did one for Evanescence and My Chemical Romance and Snow Patrol. It's suddenly all becoming clear, isn't it, right? And then he gets this opportunity to direct a big fucking feature film, and this is what he puts out. And then you go, okay, well, look, sometimes our first movies are bad. Do you know what his next movie was? The Sony Amazing Spider-Man movie. With Andrew Garfield.
I haven't remembers the memory hold one. The memory hold one.
Exactly. The one that has Dennis Leary in it. You know how I feel about Dennis Leary.
Exactly.
You know how I feel about Dennis Leary. Fuck Dennis Leary. So it was a problem
and if you
right
don't
there.
Know,
but,
go back and watch our Thomas Crown episode, and you will know.
Yes, definitely do. Fuck Dennis Leary. It will be ever thus.
Truly,
but then,
Richard's
right?
Zooey Deschanel.
I mean, listen, he's just. He's beyond that, mate. I'm pathological with him. But anyway, right? So, like, that is a terrible film. But it's not even the worst Spider-Man movie, because guess what? He directed that one. He directed The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is the one with Jamie Foxx, who played fucking Electro.
Yeah.
And now I want you to think about how there's always music in this film. And by the way, there is one period of time, and I fucking hate when films do this, unless it is something like what was it called? Dancer in the Dark, the Björk one, where she's blind.
Yep.
Right? That's a wicked musical. But they have any film that's like, haha, aren't we so random? Look, we've just broke into a song and dance number, as this one does with Joseph Gordon-Levitt in the park after they
I
first
forgot
start
that
dating.
is so terrible, with the Mary Poppins moment where they have the animated birds.
I also hate flash mobs.
Yeah. I also hate flash mobs, correct? So anyway, I want you to think about that, and then think about how Jamie Foxx does that fucking thing, doesn't he? When he's Electro and he's bouncing around and it's playing the fucking Spider-Man thing.
Fuck as well. Yeah.
It's absolutely diabolically bad, that film. And he made that, and then you go, well, listen, they're Sony movies.
Yeah.
They're born to be dog shit. They're superhero movies. That's cape shit. His next movie was one called Gifted, which stars Chris Evans, who you'll know as Captain America, right? And guess what? It's about a fucking film with a super duper smart, intellectually gifted 7-year-old, is the fucking quote on the box. And she's in a custody battle, but she's smarter than all the adults that are just trying to hurt themselves. This film fucking reeks. It blows. And he made that too. And it's just elements of 500 Days of Summer just put into fucking Kramer versus Kramer. And then, right, he also did another quirky movie right, which was The Only Living Boy in New York, right, which bombed, didn't even get critically
the
acclaimed.
first thing I think when I hear this, Richard, is I just think of like when David Lynch and Jodorowsky can't get like funding for films, you know.
I know.
Like, I've got a great script, but I can't get it made. And then
Sorry,
then Hollywood just calling. Have you got any more ideas? You got it. Listen, I will take anything you've got at this point in time.
But he did both of those films in the same year, 2017, and then he didn't. That was it. It was over for him. You're like, finally, the evil has been exorcised. Like, like in a horror movie, the sun comes out. You know what I mean? Dracula's back in the coffin. We can all live again. Now we can't, because guess what? He works for Disney now, and he's doing the Snow White remake.
No! Well, I mean, kind of appropriate for that scene of the singing and dancing with the animated birds in 500 Days of Summer, but it's going to be terrible.
Getting away with it, Christopher. He can't.
By the way, I'm just going to put this out there.
What's it going to take to end this man?
Have you seen the teasers for that movie? It looks just like visually looks terrible. It looks
all of them
awful.
Disney like somebody at Disney has to stop this, the remaking of the classics, because I tell you what as well, like I hate myself. I will watch those movies just to fucking know how right
Guy
I am.
Ritchie's Aladdin, where they replaced Robin Williams with Will Smith. I just refuse to watch that.
That's the only Guy Ritchie film I didn't watch. I've got to admit.
Yeah,
I didn't need to. I didn't need to watch it.
Aladdin was probably my favorite from that like second golden era of Disney. So I did watch
no,
it.
the original film is great.
Yeah. So I did watch the remake, and I tell you, immediately afterwards, I got out the Ouija board and I called up to Robin Williams and I said, mate, you're not gonna believe what they're doing down here on Earth. And he said, don't fucking tell me, dog. Like I don't want to know. And I held up a picture of Will Smith painted blue, and he just did that manic laugh he did, and he went back to heaven. So listen. Fuck this guy. This guy is an unbelievable hack of epic proportions.
By the way,
and this movie might be his best. This movie might be his best.
Here's another hack movie we forgot to mention. Right, think about hackneyed movies that hipsters would think like it should be brought back and have a cool now suddenly when they... There's randomly, he just puts in like a really awkwardly layered in over the top. They just cut to that scene from The Graduate where they're just driving away on the bus. That's so... Even though in his life, he's not getting that. He doesn't actually run away with her and get the success and the love. She just falls asleep on his shoulder as he gets recocked after that fucking wedding or whatever it is. Or whatever, some shit like that when they went on a trip or whatever it was,
But obviously as well, I mean, like, this is the mad part. It says it's a character trait that he is overly invested in finding the one because he has misinterpreted. This is the opening scene. He has misinterpreted the meaning of the movie The Graduate. Well, so's the fucking director, you bellend. Yes. You fucking... And I guess that brings us to the writers, because I don't know how much of this I can put on the director. I can certainly put all the soundtrack choices, scene composition, the awful takes he uses. Like, by the way, when they have their first breakup on day 288 or whatever the fuck it is, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt is meant to be playing catatonic despair and just smashing plates over and over again. I can't even believe it's real. It's like a school play.
Now where is he? Thomas?
Rachel, what are you doing?
I'm here to help you.
It's so bad.
They don't come in like, oh my God, he's smashing plates and he's going to self up. Let's get him sectioned. They just come in like, he's having a bad day and he like...
Yeah.
But this is what I'm talking about. That is hipster rage right there.
The super wise Morgan Freeman child to come and talk him out of it. And she brings him a bottle of vodka. What's happening?
It is the least dangerous possible. It's like, and this is what hipsterdom was like, which is that you know the thing that you should do, but then you do the safer version of that thing as an ironic performance piece.
Oh, by the way,
basically, remember
the way you know he's really depressed is he goes in his robe and he buys like a bottle of Jack. Yeah. Like, no.
Like, come on, man. I know. It's grow up.
Hung up in beds on a stranger, just trying to swing a full-time rap. I never knew the cold handle day.
Like, like, I mean, like, you know what, there's a similar scene, funnily enough, in The Fisher King, and I know we're flirting with the idea of a Gilliam arc, but it's Jeff Bridges in that movie,
Yeah,
and he looks
and
really fucked up, and he's really, and that movie's a banger, yeah, and he absolutely does have a reason to be absolutely fucked up. He lost everything. He's working in a fucking radio repair shop or whatever the fuck it is, drinking himself to death after being a fucking big
Joseph Gordon-Levitt
radio celebrity.
lost a not girlfriend that told him she didn't want a relationship, and then
right at the start. Right at the start. This is the thing I hate about this movie as well. Like,
all right, what about the writers?
Hold
Sorry,
on.
I'm sidetracked.
Yeah. Let's segue. Well, we can critique
the
the
other
script.
films
when we talk
that are
about
just
the
as bad. Don't worry, get ready.
yeah. So get this, right? This blew my mind. One of the writers of this movie, Michael H. Weber, insisted that it was like based on his life, that things that he was writing in this super unrealistic movie, it was actually based on two relationships that he had, and that like it's super authentic on that basis. But it isn't. This is the problem, right? Like, as somebody who has written autobiographical, semi-autobiographical stories, the problem is a story still has to be neat, conform to certain things, and obviously when it's viewed from your lens, there's going to be certain biases. If you're the protagonist, which very often you are when you write from that, it's all gonna it's hyper reality, right? And so if you wanted to make something authentic, you would catch yourself in that. And by the way, there were two writers for this script. They're partners that work on all sorts of stuff, but none of it good. And anyway, so he insisted, like 500 Days of Summer was like legit, totally real, man, based on my life. You want to know what else this motherfucker got to do? It's unreal how bad it is. I mean, so he segues through doing the Pink Panther remakes, which I don't even think anyone remembers that they were real. But he also did that, The Fault in Our Stars?
Which is just the male version of this. Yep. They were just reversed the roles basically in that movie.
They did that.
It is terrible.
Both of the writers from this movie did that. And for those who don't know, The Fault of the Stars is basically like, oh, we're in a relationship and like you've got cancer and it's fucking, and we're just kids with cancer. It is cancer. It's as bad as it sounds. It's like it is swinging for that fucking unbelievable. Like how sometimes you win an Oscar for cancer movies. What if we made them kids that were in love cancer movies, and then you just think of Tropic Thunder? Someone had to come into the room and go, no, you can't. This is too much, by the way, guys. This will be remembered universally as a terrible, pathetic attempt at emotional manipulation and not deep writing whatsoever. So it is the same motherfuckers. And let me tell you another thing. I was like, I watched that Disaster Artist, right? With James Franco about The Room. And like, do you want to know what else is funny? That same media twat I used to date. Do you know what her other favorite fucking movie was that she would watch all the time? The fucking Room. It's the first time I ever saw that with her as well. Right? So these guys have done so much damage to me, right? So, but I'm thinking, like, I had to watch The Room a bunch, and I'm just like, well, listen, I watch a lot of B movies. Bro, she used to invite her friends round, and she used to invite her friends round, and they would have room parties. I'm not fucking joking, dog. Like, and they would shout the lines at the fucking TV. You're tearing me apart. They would do it all, mate. And I would just have to be sat there surrounded by all of her media twat friends going, well, I'm a media twat now, so this is what I'm supposed to do. They are tearing me apart, Lisa. I'm having such a great time watching this every fucking weekend. So anyway, when the Disaster Artist got made, I thought, fucking hell, I have suffered through The Room enough. And it is kind of become mainstream now. It was sort of becoming mainstream at that moment in time. But now everybody knows what The Room is. Everyone's seen it. Probably people have been to the ironic, cinema viewings. And now they're making a mainstream movie about it in 2017. And I was watching it and I was transported back to the horror of that moment. But I was just thinking, like, this movie doesn't quite have it. And it's not just that it's James Franco and Seth Rogen. They probably just smoked a bunch of weed and blew the money away and just made a shit film because they're buddies. There's something soulless and not quite right about this. It's the same fucking writers. It's the same guys. They did it again. They didn't quite nail how, like, Tommy Wiseau's a fucking narcissistic maniac. They didn't quite get it. They made him like a lovable, quirky. He's a maniac.
Yeah, they actually sort of make him an inspirational, heroic figure.
Yeah,
who, like,
I know.
Deserves to have this success.
I remember at the end.
So
I remember
mad,
at the end when they're watching the movie, and everyone's like, "Yeah, you did it, Tommy." Did what exactly? The movie he compares. It's like a Christ allegory, and he was just a shit actor, just a shit, an unbelievably shit actor.
It would be like if someone wrote a biopic where actually secretly Uwe Boll was Orson Welles.
It's like,
well, what's wild about that too is that, you know, that is the spin that Tommy Wiseau has tried to put on The Room, is that it was some sort of like, oh, I knew it was bad. It was ironic, guys. When you know he's
they
just
all
a
do
psycho.
this, mate.
Yeah,
they all do this. The guy who made Troll 2 does this now. You know Troll 2, right? Obviously the sequel to Troll, but it's that scene that's got the fucking, you know, it's got the movie with that classic scene in it. They're eating her, and now they're gonna eat me too. Oh my god! It's that one, right? And so anyway, the director is a guy called Claudio Fragasso, right? And he for years would be like, well, no, I don't.
If I could go back in time, I'd pick that as my game name, Fragasso.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Claudio Fragasso, CS player, right? And so anyway, he was going around for years saying, well, no, the film is popular. People watch it all the time. It goes into cinemas. It must be a good film. He's only like recently started leaning into. I always knew it was bad. It was meant to be bad. It's a genre movie. I love that it gives so much joy and people treat it like a comedy. No, you don't. No, you don't. You objectively don't. And unfortunately, as I said, all of these films I'm talking about now tangentially linked to 500 Days of Summer. What I'm really trying to do is not talk about 500 Days of Summer. But also, these are all better. These are better movies. Troll 2 is a better movie than 500 Days of Summer.
By the way, it is, and so is The Room, because they're funny. Like, here's the other thing we have to get back to, though. The other thing that is insane about this film is how fucking long it is. It feels like...
How long is it? I don't even think it is that long, bro.
Is it not?
I don't think it was way too long. Sure I mean, nothing happens in this movie. There actually is it is a series of...
Oh my god, it's only 95 minutes long. I actually thought this was 2.5 hours long for real. I think I just looked at the time.
That's because nothing happens in this film. It's just a series of like slice of life vignettes, but between two extremely dislikable people. And I want to talk about this because we hinted at this at the beginning, but I actually think that this is anti-art. Like, I think if you could create the exact opposite of art, as in something that is not entertaining, that is not insightful, that has not only no meaning, but actually kind of like siphons your soul in the process, it would be something like this. This is like something that Satan made to put on earth to corrupt people.
In a way, it sort of like says so much by saying so little.
It is so fucking bad. And look, I don't care. I don't need a feel-good story. I could have an insightful discussion or an insightful film about let's subvert expectations about traditional relationships. Like, I'm fine. I'm there for that if we get some insight. The problem with this movie is that not only does it just go back to exactly it conforms to everything at the end, so it kills its own message. But the characters are so fucking dislikable. And you hate, like, I just hate all the characters in this movie with every core of my being. And when you think about it, it's like this guy, I hate people like this who they're doing this like easy, ironic job, like greeting card writer, but they really just want to be an architect. And by the way, secretly they're brilliant, of course. They're just not recognized. And oh, well, here's this random girl who comes along.
They need a woman to tell them to do it.
Yeah. And so they need somebody else to do it, but it's somebody who's unattainable. And of course, this guy who's kind of just a bum gets the perfect 10 out of 10 girl who, you know, okay, she throws him out of his comfort zone, and now he's gonna like kick his life into gear. And now he's going to try and be an architect. Does he ever get there? We don't know, mercifully, because this movie ends. I couldn't deal with another 30 minutes of the autumn he's an architect arc, which was coming next.
I'm sure they flirted with the idea of a sequel, bro. I'm sure.
I'm sure.
I'm sure that nearly got optioned,
But I just hate the fact that there is no lesson to learn from this movie. You don't even learn a lesson about, hey, you don't even want this relationship. So first off, he loses his ideals, the things that are driving him. Like, he can't pursue his own career dream, but then his dreams of this kind of like elevated romance, which, by the way, just exists in the collective unconscious of humanity, and every society obviously flirts with these ideas. And even if we know that there isn't really the one or whatever, or this eternal idea of love, the concept of it is still very valuable, and it's life, it's life affirming. There is nothing that's life affirming about this movie. I want the world to end when I watch this movie, because I don't want things like this to exist. Because there's nothing that's good about this. There's nothing enlightening. It's just like, well, you know how I told you that I didn't want a relationship? Turned out I did. And I'm actually super cool with getting married and the return to the traditional system that's been accepted. And it was for me. Turns out I just didn't love you. But good thing I was there, because now you can just pursue your dreams in other place. Even though I crushed this really, I think, noble in a way fantasy that you had of a larger than life romance, right? And now you can't even believe that. And this is what I hate about postmodernity in general, is that it treats these ideas that have been with us since the dawn of humanity with such intense scorn, as if they were never worth having. And haha, aren't you just a fool to have had these fantasies? Like, no, like literally every human has had these fantasies forever.
But then doesn't even commit to the bit. I mean,
no,
look,
it doesn't.
Man, I am one of them. I am one of them people who fucking rejects fucking tradition. Like I am one of those guys.
Fine.
I'm like, yeah, it's all bullshit. But this movie doesn't serve my fucking masters either. This movie is like, so wait, you have spent the entire film being this quirky force of nature to the point of actually being a parody of it, and then you just turn around and in about 3 sentences of exposition at the end you go, yeah, all of that shit that I never believed in, I believe in it now because I met I got me a real man.
You never wanted to be anybody's girlfriend, and now you're somebody's wife.
It surprised me too.
I don't think I'll ever understand that. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
What? What? A guy?
And not only that, but it subverts your expectations in the stupidest way, which is like, they're at the wedding and she doesn't tell him, which, by the way, pretty shitty thing to do to her, the man that she was going to marry, is that she knows how he feels because he tells her, and she still leads him on in this moment where they're at the wedding, and oh, she got the bouquet, so she's getting married next, surely to Tom, right? Nope. Haha, your expectations were subverted. Do we ever get to see the guy?
Thanks, Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, it's like, what a funny prank to pull on the audience. It's like, but we don't care about this guy, because literally the only thing we ever see is the back of his head.
I never for a second wanted these two to get together. In what world would this be a good relationship? How could it ever change? She's out there. By the way, her idea of liberation for him, I guess a form of empowerment, is she gets him to sort of ritualistically humiliate himself in public settings often, right? That seems to be her idea of, hey, man, we're not tethered to the system.
Nice to do it at a wedding. Just have him shout penis at a wedding.
Yeah, just shout penis at a wedding. Like, what? Why are you doing that?
No.
Right. Then he is so needy and clingy and weird. Yeah, at the heart of it, it is nice probably to think of maybe one day you'll meet somebody and they'll be amazing and they'll complete you and you'll fall in love with them and you'll live happy ever after. We just know that's not how it goes down, like 99% of the time. But yeah, have that ideal, that's fine. But to get it like week one, day one, it's just abnormal, man. Like, he is a fucking loser, stalker,
yes,
nerd creep.
level with me, man. Come on. Is your best friend, huh? Your best friend who tolerated you whining about this girl for weeks on end. You were essentially stalking her.
Like, that's what he is. There's nothing desirable about him. And so what happens in a long enough time, you know, put it this way, if you wanted to make an honest version of this movie, like, here's what happens. Basically, they have a big fight. She storms out, comes home one day to apologize, and he's just swinging from the fucking rafters. That's the more accurate version of what would have happened in the film.
That's also why at first I was like,
day 500.
That's why I wrote maybe 14-year-old boys movie, because this is like what you think would happen if the girl you just look at across an office and never talk to, and in your mind fell in love with, or think you fell in love with because you're infatuated. This is like what would actually happen, you think, if you dated her. But it wouldn't. You wouldn't even get past date 1. She wouldn't agree to the date. But if you did, you'd think you'd get this way. And this is why, to get to the crux of why this film is utterly spiritually bereft. Because I agree with Monty. It's portrayed as an irreverent, harmless rom-com or coming-of-age tale about growing up and learning what we have to do about life. But actually, it is spiritually corrosive to watch this film. Because the worst thing about it is, I think people do get to the end of this film and do think there's like a fucking gravitas to that scene at the end where she comes to see him, and that it has some sort of like a life lesson within it, and that it's one of those, you know, maybe like the new job we got was the friends we made all along the way. It's like some sort of fucked up, like, I think people think this has like a pathos to it.
It was necessary that he had to go through this.
The other thing as well about this Monty is, not only is this cunt director constantly in his fucking Winamp It Kicks the Llama's Ass playlist from the 90s and 2000s, but he also has the audacity to dare to try and parallel what's going on with the fucking French New Wave in that scene where they're like acting out all the scenes and like famous things like, and this is a guy who, if you ever watched that, you just saw the surface level of that. You are a fucking bozo. Like, the worst thing is, I think the Marc Webb guy has aspirations, like Richard says, that he's making like the 2000s Annie Hall, and he's some like cutting, insightful guy who's tapped into something about the human condition. Also, nightmare PR speak all that time, but like, no, the whole film, it's just like, it's actually a booby trap of shit.
But there's not even any kind of and you could say, well, the point of it is that there wasn't substance to their relationship. But why do I want to watch that? Like, why do I want? There's no reason to watch this, because it's not fun, it's not funny, it's not interesting, it's not. It doesn't tell me. It doesn't have deep themes. It's just shit. It's shit all around.
I'll tell you though. Like, actually, a Marriage Story. There you go. Marriage Story. That movie. That's about two people, like, basically at the tail end of the relationship. And there's probably a part of you, because you watch so much like Hollywood garbage, where you're being trained to think, oh, they'll work it out, they'll fall in love again. But life ain't like that. And that's like a much more realistic depiction. So you can do.
Of course you can.
Films. Yeah.
Of course you can.
But
that's what I'm saying, is that there isn't anything artful about this. And not only that, but you don't even get a sense of the characters, because every scene in this movie is boring. Nothing happens. There's no actual movement. You don't even understand why these characters like each other, because they never have any interesting conversations. It's like what Thorin was saying. Like, think about the beats in this movie. Oh, you like the Smiths? Yeah, that really fucking famous band that every hipster would be like, oh, I grew up with the Smiths and I like them, but the bands I like now, you know, the new bands that I like now are these very obscure ones. But it's like the same background came on, by the way. And then when you look at, oh well, of course, this man who has nothing attractive to him for a woman who is allegedly as desirable as told to us by the narrator as Zooey Deschanel's summer character. He doesn't have a career. He doesn't even have ambition, because he's killed his own ambitions. He doesn't have money. He's not the most handsome man. Like, what exactly is the driving force that attracts her to him? We never really understand that. But he's so apparently magnetic that she just starts making out with him in the copy room at work. And then on top of that, he has to, like, when they're about to like have sex, he has to go psych himself up in the bedroom. Of course, she's just naked on the bed after that. It's just everything. That's what I mean. Is like, it is a teenage boy.
Who's ever had to do that? Yeah, who's ever had to do that as an adult male with a sex life? Who's ever like or as an adult woman with a sex life? Who's ever had to go like, oh, 1 minute, yeah, I'm just be over here. You got this, dude. You totally fucking got this. You're gonna fucking rock their world.
She's the girl. She's the girl. She wants to keep it casual, which is why why she's in my bed right now. But that's casual. That's what casual people do.
Like,
but all of the rest of the scenes are like this. And if you think about, oh, well, what do we see of their relationship? It's that they're at IKEA and they're doing the most mild role play of being married, which is, I guess, you know, that actually might be the most interesting commentary on the millennial generation. But
that's at least plausible that you might do in a relationship. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Just as a silly little like.
I've been to IKEA so many
but
times.
my point is that the only things that exist are these silly things. There isn't anything that exists in this movie where you see them connecting on any kind of deeper level. There's nothing.
No, there isn't. I mean, that's the other part. There isn't really any substance to the movie in the sense that at the end, by the end, no, like even you as the viewer, what have you learned? Like what has the film taught you about life?
Nothing.
Exactly.
It's
that you wouldn't or you wouldn't ordinarily have got for yourself. If anything, like, so I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, this is fucking infantile. This is like actually ridiculous. I think about where I was at the time in my life when I would have been, the Tom's age, right? And I think about what I was doing and how I would have behaved and the things that were going on with me and the relationships I was in. It's like, bro, like I don't even know. Like Marc Webb is fucking older than me. How did he write this?
Because this subculture started, 10 years earlier. If he was like really in the thick of it.
Yeah, but like he's too old for it, man. Like
really?
he's like born in like the 70s. He's like born in 74.
That makes it a bit creepy, mate, because there's almost like a sort of, again, caricaturist, like disturbing fetishization of youth in this film.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's born in like 70 something. And so it's like, the way that he's wrote about this.
Joined 1974.
Yeah, there you go. So
I mean, he would have been mid-20s. He would have been
35.
Like, when this was released. But I'm saying, like, if he was there in the early 2000s, he would have been mid-20s. It's plausible.
Yeah, but what I mean is, like, so he is writing about like this hipster scene, and yet the relationships that they're in, they don't feel like real 20-something relationships. The roommates don't feel like roommates; they feel like school friends.
God. Here's a detail for you I've just found by Googling it, right? This detail alone says so much. Are you ready? The film was originally set in San Francisco, but was later moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah, there you go.
And by the way, San Francisco, and especially like the warehouse scene in Oakland was another like big hotbed.
Yeah, of course.
That's
what I mean. It's so cliched.
Yeah. I was actually surprised this was set in LA because LA definitely wasn't, one of the like this is a movie that should be set in Brooklyn and New York for sure. It's weird it's kind of weird that it's in LA.
You want to hate your life? The bench that they filmed that scene on at the end has like a plaque on it saying like, this is from day 95 and 48 of one of Tom's favorite places and the summers too. And it has a thing of 500 Days of Summer. Just look it up, the bench. It's at Angels Knoll on 365 South Olive Street in downtown LA.
As I say, look, I know he's only responsible for the direction, but I'm putting it all on Marc Webb's doorstep. Like when I watch a movie.
He chose to.
Yeah, when I watch a movie, like there's got to be something at the end. Now, look, mindless escapism is also a totally valid thing to engage in. Well, this isn't that either. It's like it's not even like because it's setting you up like it's gonna whisper the secret truth of the universe in your ear by the end. But then it is.
There's going to be a payoff, of course. Yes.
Yeah, there is no. Unfortunately, hi, my name's Autumn. Get it? That's the fucking payoff.
I know.
That's the payoff. Oh, bro, I would shat in my hands and flung it at the screen if I saw this in the cinema.
And in mind, this is a Roger Ebert 4 out of 4 movie. And
Oh, yeah, I've
also,
got his review. It's on standby.
It's a beloved movie that some people would put on their favorite movies list.
Yes.
When that gets to the line, my name, it's Autumn, like that makes you think you're in a simulation. This can't be reality. Like, there's no way reality could be this badly written. Like, it couldn't. It had to hold together better than this. Like, this is the crack start of showing the writing of the background law of reality. Like, this could never succeed. Like, that, I know everything about this film. It just shouldn't exist. And now I've watched it twice. For fuck's sake.
I mean, I don't know what number this would have put me on. It's the first time I've watched it.
The joke is you could do a 500
relationship.
days of watching 500 Days of Summer, and we just skip back and forwards as you enter a depression and go through a whole existential journey.
No, it'd be pretty good. 500 days of 500 Days of Summer would actually be legit. I've had to watch this film every day for 500 days.
Obviously, you realise like 10 minutes into the film when she says the name Summer, then you're like, because you're thinking, oh, is it a witty name? 500 Days of Summer? Is it to do with like our youth? And you know, how many 500 days, how many years would that be? Is it about the primal coming of age years? No, her name's just Summer, and he had 500 days with her.
Like, put it this way, like,
I can't take any part of this movie. It's so shit.
There's a lot of like
The Thing wasn't good. This
I
fucking
know.
The Thing sucked. And then he turns around. Oh, well, put on 500 Days of Summer again, will you? Order a pizza in. We'll get into it. Fuck you can't. It's so shit. You're so fucking bad.
There's one thing I will say about this before we go on to roasting Roger Ebert for a little bit at the end. I will say, like, there is something to be said about art in terms of, like, where we view ourselves based on the relationships we were in at that time. And so, you know, if I was to sort of tell an oral history of Richard Lewis and what he did in his life, I could easily do it by, and then I was dating this person, I saw this person, living with this person, doing that. You could sort of do it. It would be a good way to kind of break it up, because I think basically when you get out of one relationship, anyone who's been in a long-term relationship knows this, you sort of do have to essentially, like, you know, you go through a period of mourning, you have all this weird stuff, you know, it's kind of like the, you know, however many stages of fucking grief there are, you know, the bargaining, maybe I'll send them an email and fucking buy them a present on their birthday and we'll see. And, you know, you go through all these weird things and then you sort of have to rebuild yourself and get back out there and meet somebody else, don't you, you know? And so there's been some great pieces of art that fit that archetype down the years. I'm thinking immediately of Bukowski's Women, you know, great read. Unfortunately, this movie tries to be that, but also it was made by a twat, made for twats, starring twats who've done nothing. Like, none of these people have done anything. They've never even experienced real heartbreak. What they've experienced is the middle to upper class hipster version of heartbreak. Yep. You know,
which, by the way, I am totally down for the movie that did an interesting commentary on the vapidness of hipster culture. Yeah. But this isn't it. It's not it.
No, it's fully embraces it. There's fully embrace this. I would go as far as say, not only does this embrace it, it extended it. It made it
perpetuates it. Yes, it makes it cool, which was its problem, was that people thought it was cool.
Was literally how I was introduced to it. You know, it's like I like to say, you always know you're in for a bad time when somebody you care about gives you a piece of art, a book, a movie, a TV show, and they go, "You're gonna love this," because not only when it's bad is it bad, and you have to go back to them and feign that you enjoyed it, but it also proves they don't get you at all. It's the ultimate fucking, like, it's the double wound. It's like, it cuts you twice, because that you realize in that moment, if you ever thought for a second I would like 500 Days of Summer, who do you think I am? So this movie, as I said, there's not really. It just doesn't have anything positive. I'm actually surprised as well, because I didn't remember it being as bad as this, even though I remembered it being bad. I didn't remember it as totally irredeemably dog shit. Surely it can't be that bad, Richard, because look at all these other people who liked it. No, it's absolutely terrible.
Well, I think that, Richard, like, I think I probably hate this movie more than any other movie. which is why, you know, when we saw that Roger Ebert had given it 4 stars.
Like we say, it has no redeeming elements. Like it's genuinely really boring and bad and horrible.
Yes. And also I just think like philosophically cancerous. And like,
you know, that's the thing.
But
When
I mean,
people nowadays, like, I think you know this, right? If you're a games person, everyone knows the review scale got fucked as soon as all corporate games shit came in, where they came and said, right, a good movie now is a 9, and then the fucking same with games, and then an average movie's a 7, and about a 6 or 5's the worst you can ever give. So people aren't used to a world where you ever dip below 5, which should obviously be average, right? I'm sorry, like there are loads of movies I think are shit as hyperbole or crap, but would have like you could watch them on a plane. I've said about superhero movie. You know what? Here's an example. Even shit like Green Lantern's got more to it than this. Even that has like performance from Mark Strong. Like, you know, dog shit movies are better than this. They have something in them. This is soulless. That's the worst thing. It's trying to be deep and it's utterly soulless and vacuous. It's actually, like I say, it's like the lack of a movie. After the 2 hours, you go, where did the 2 hours go? It's 95 minutes apparently, but to me, it's like it's like a bad salvia trip. It might only like have literally lasted this many minutes, but you actually experienced eternity in that time period, you know. You know that movie, 3,000 Years of Longing? That was me waiting for the fucking movie to end.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable, man. Like, there's not one good thing I can say about it, and I'm glad it delivered on that front because, you know, I took a risk. I took a big risk bringing The Beast Must Die to the table. I imagine that's going to get absolutely fucking panned.
Oh, imagine if Roger Ebert had actually pipped you and he'd like just been a little bit better than that film. And
that's what I mean. If 500 Days of Summer had been better than The Beast Must Die, I would have felt real bad, man. I would have felt real bad.
Like, even watching The Beast Must Die, like, I agree the concept is at least fun. There's nothing fun really about the concept of this movie. And at the very least, you get like an interesting time capsule, right? Into the 70s, into blaxploitation, into the culture of that time. Like, I lived in this culture, and they're actually really good actors for the most part too, like a surprisingly strong cast. I lived in this time period. I lived in the center of this culture, and I hated it then. And so not only do I have to deal with this dog shit movie, but I have to deal with the fact that I was like part of the milieu that spawned this, and it's not something that's fun to remember. Like, do you think in 30 years people are going to go back and be like, well, I really want to see this like hipster nostalgia piece? No, fuck that. This culture can go die in a fire. You know what I mean?
It's sort of its time. It is like a time capsule in all the wrong ways. Like it has no cultural export.
It's not cool. It's not cool like an 80s cheesy movie would be, where you get to see some of the cool parts of the 1980s. I am here to tell you guys, as somebody who lived in this within this culture and within its geographic borders of where it was the most intense, it wasn't cool. I mean, there's nothing to be nostalgic about here.
I will ask you both a question. Would this film have been better with a werewolf breaking it?
Listen, if you actually just didn't hint and it randomly at the end just went, one of them was a werewolf, that would actually change the whole movie. It's strange. You can see every bad movie just use that
500 Days of Lycanthropy. That's a film. I'd watch that. But unfortunately...
By the way, you could actually make the movie better by making one of them a werewolf. What happens is, he's the Renfeld character who wants to be turned into a werewolf. She's like, the thing is, I'm not ready to make a pact with you where we eternally roam the land, savaging other humans and animals. And at the end, even though she said that, she then hooks up with some other dude she just met and makes him a werewolf. And this guy has to just accept being human, not even a werewolf, in a world where werewolves exist. And in the end, that's the lesson we all learned on the werewolf journey.
You have actually made it a better film.
I actually think that your guys' idea of 500 days of summer, where you have to react to this movie every day.
I couldn't, man. I'd break.
Richard, it is a much better piece of art than this film would ever be, because you would actually comment on why this is bad and maybe discover something meaningful.
I wouldn't make 500 days. It'd be like NoFap. I just couldn't do it, man. I'd crack immediately. Like I'd just be on the 4 guys that can't do it. I'm sorry. Like, not for NoFap, obviously, for the 500 days of 500 days of summer or whatever. Anyway, we haven't roasted Roger Ebert nearly enough this episode. I'm going to go into his review. Right. So here we go. Let me. I mean, first of all, his review is kind of weird because it's really just a love letter to Zooey Deschanel. It's kind of bizarre.
What?
I hope his wife didn't read this. Yeah, it's really weird. So anyway, here we go. Right. Okay, I'll just read it. So some say they're not doing the first paragraph, but some say they're annoyed by the way the film begins on day 488 or whatever and then jumps around, providing utterly unhelpful data labels, day 1, day 249. But movies are supposed to reassure us that events unfold. Movies are supposed to reassure us that events unfold in an orderly procession. But Tom remembers his love Summer as a series of joys and bafflements. What kind of woman likes you perfectly sincerely and has no one else in her life but is not interested in ever getting married? Zooey Deschanel is a good choice to play such a woman. I can't imagine her playing a clinging vine, too ornery. As Summer, she sees Tom with a level gaze and is who she is. It's Tom's bad luck. She is sweet and smart and beautiful. It's not an act. She is always scrupulously honest with him. She is her own person, and Tom can't have her. You ever known someone like that? In romance, we believe what we want to believe. Like, see what I mean?
She wasn't honest either. Remember, we pointed out at the end of the movie, she repeatedly doesn't give key pieces of information to lead him on. It's not even true.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
Is a love letter, I know.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It's like Roger Ebert here has got in his feelings and gone back to like young Roger
Richard,
Ebert. It's got nothing to do with the movie at this point.
Here's the thing.
Roger Ebert right now is doing his own reality versus expectations of what he thinks she's like.
Because the manic pixie dream girl quote, like character archetype, is actual crack to some men. It's actual crack. And so, like, I feel like he just got sucked in by that.
Oh, no, by the way, it is like the male equivalent of the woman who just is she can't stop being attracted to the really dangerous bad boy who probably will be like a violent criminal and beat her. But something about her, she just keeps getting into that. It's like the male equivalent. These people do just trip over and get into another relationship. This is true. Makes me wonder who Roger Ebert is, though, by the way. Makes me wonder, mate.
I've got a bit of that myself, man. If you're fucking, if you're emotionally really unstable and trash, I'll be in love with you.
The first thing this makes me think that we've never discussed is, to me, Roger Ebert was always an old man, but Richard, once he must have been a youth. Once he must have had the folly and the dreams and the naivety of youth. And all I can say, Roger, is I'm getting a hell of an insight here. Like, I feel like the only way me or you, Richard, can truly exorcise this demon from the fucking world is someone needs to go and research his past and write sort of like the real Roger, or Roger and me, you could call it. There'll be a straight bang. Obviously, the joke is they could on that thing, and just go. And if it turned out he was some like proto hipster douchebag watching, I don't know, Last Picture Show or something like, and then it's the only way it would make this better if that was the origin story.
He's a film critic. It's almost certainly the case, isn't it?
Got to be done it. I know. He's some theatre kid type wanker, really. I know.
So anyway, in romance, we believe what we want to believe. That's the reason 500 Days of Summer is so appealing. Tom is in love with Summer from the moment he sees her. His thoughts on love may not run as deeply as, say, those of the romantic poets. He writes greeting cards, and you suspect he may believe his own cards. It's amazing people get paid for a job like that. I could do it. Love is a rose, and you are its petals. Summer is his boss's new assistant. She likes his looks and makes her move one day over the Xerox machine. Can he accept that she simply likes him for now, not forever? The movie, which is a delightful comedy alive with invention, is about Tom wrestling with that reality.
What invention? It's totally cliched collage. It's not shit. Like you said, it's like a smash cut mixtape with some bullshit movie put on the front. And the guy unironically, you didn't even read the whole list. He unironically did every cliched band from that scene. My Chemical Romance. And you go down the list like fucking everything shit.
It gets worse. He's about to compare Marc Webb to one of the all-time great directors. So here we go. The director,
come on, hit me with it.
The director, Marc Webb, seems to be casting about for templates from other movies to help him tell his story.
True.
But that's not desperation, but playfulness. There's a little black and there's a little black and white. Small print. I'm going blind. There's a little black and white, a little musical number, a little Fellini, which is always helpful in invoking a man in the act of yearning.
That is fucking crazy, bro.
Tom
If
spends
any
this
movies are the opposite of this, they actually intentionally flout convention and intentionally are supposed to have like a deep, powerful like meaning that resonates with what happened in your life, like as like an auto fucking biographical comport. It's actually the opposite. This means Roger Ebert doesn't even understand Fellini. Oh my fucking god!
Tom spends this movie in the emotional quandary of Mastroianni and La Dolce Vita. I knew he'd reference it.
His hand, how is he doing that?
His hand always outstretched towards his inaccessible fantasies. Stummer remains mysterious all through the film. Perhaps because we persist with Tom and expecting her to cave in. When we realize she is not required to in this movie because it's not playing by the Hollywood rules, we perk up. Anything could happen. The kaleidoscopic time structure breaks the shackles of the 3-act grid and thrashes about with the freedom of romantic confusion. One thing men love is to instruct women. If a woman wants to enchant a man, she is wise to play his pupil. Men fall for this. Tom set out in life to be an architect, not a poet of greeting cards. He and Summer share the same favorite view of Los Angeles, and he conducts for her an architectural tour. This is fun, not because we get to see wonderful buildings, but because so rarely in the movies do we find characters arguing for their aesthetic values. What does your average character played by an A-list star believe about truth and beauty? Has Jason Bourne ever gone to a museum on his day off? Right? We're near the end. I don't know why Jason Bourne, a fucking special agent with amnesia, desperately trying to get to the truth of a mad conspiracy, would say, right, well, it is Sunday, so I'm going to go check out that fucking museum.
Time to go to Miracle Mile.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has acted in a lot of movies, ranging from one of the Halloween sequels to the indie gem Brick. By the way, Brick is good. He comes into focus here playing a believable, likable guy.
Likeable,
detestable, hopeful, easily disappointed, a little Tom Hanksian, outrageous. He is strong enough to expect love, weak enough to be hurt. Zooey Deschanel evokes that ability in some women to madden you with admiration while never seeming to give it the slightest thought. She also had that quality in the overlooked movie Gigantic, although the movie's peculiar supporting characters obscured it. Tom opens the film by announcing it will not be your typical love story. Are you like me, and when you realize a movie is on autopilot, you get impatient with it? How long can the characters pretend they don't know how the story will end? Here is a rare movie that begins by telling us how it will end, and is about how the hero has no idea why. Now, I have no idea why. Roger Ebert, one of America's most eminent film critics, thinks this movie is even worth a comparison to one of his self-professed favorite movies of all time, La Dolce Vita. And saying the man who directed The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is fucking comparable to Fellini might be the most fucking batshit thing he ever wrote. Now, what I will say is, hang on, when did Roger Ebert die?
Oh, I think we said it was quite a while ago now, right?
Yeah, it was 2013 he died. So there is
only like 4 years or something after this.
Yeah, there is a chance he was whacked out of his mind on cancer.
Oh, he probably already had the cancer. Right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Or, you know, to be more generous, he was like, oh, I'm dying in that, aren't I? So, like, life's Zooey Deschanel's cute. I don't know.
I just don't understand how you can possibly praise her performance in this. Her performance is nothing. She's so wooden in this role.
Yeah, but none of them are good. As I said,
I detest the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. Like, I really hate that movie, despite the fact that many people consider it a classic. But Katharine Hepburn in that movie actually is really good. I hate her character, but she does an excellent job of acting. Like, I can't say that about Zooey Deschanel in this movie. I both hate her performance and I hate her.
You're not a big fan of Mickey Rooney in that. It's fucking outrageous, that film. It's actually outrageous. I can't believe how grotesquely offensive that is, like by modern sensibilities.
It's really bad. But I mean, even if you were to delete the Mickey Rooney scenes, just the central romance is infuriating and is, this is like the older version of the manic pixie dream girl, where you have this woman who's incredibly, imbalanced, basically, who has this guy who's gaga over her and will do anything no matter how crazy the shit she does. Although she's like actually manic in that movie, doing potentially very dangerous things, and really fucking with him. But at the same time, I felt like there was more of a message about the relationship within that film. And like, I don't like that movie and I don't like the characters, but I like it infinitely more than 500 Days of Summer.
I mean, I'll also just add, like, Audrey Hepburn is the shit. Like,
yes,
I'm just put that.
Yeah, it's
She's
great.
great.
Also, we got the banger song Moon River out of that. So Moon River's an all-time classic.
Hepburn is who modern idiots think that Zooey Deschanel is when they're thinking she's this character.
Yes,
but she doesn't hold a candle to it.
No.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. Audrey Hepburn is fabulous. She is queen. And she did indeed slay, whether or not you like the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's.
I concur
Zooey
with that
Deschanel
opinion, but
not.
like the praising of her acting chops, especially because this is the only character she ever plays, right?
Right. Sure. I get it. I mean, like
anyway.
Zooey Deschanel has said, like she didn't have much of a career after this, really. I mean, like I wouldn't say having to go, like maybe now you go and do a TV show and it's totally fine. But I think if you've been doing like big Hollywood films and then you go and do a TV series back in, this is really as prestige TV was like emerging, and certainly what was it called, New Girl or whatever.
Yes, it was a very popular TV show for a while, but yeah.
Yeah, well, sure. Like, listen, I've seen it referenced. I've never watched it, obviously. But I've seen it referenced. I think they had a crossover episode with Brooklyn Nine-Nine or something. But I mean, obviously, like I would say that's around the time really prestige TV was kind of getting started. It's not like kind of, I suppose maybe not. I mean, Sopranos is the 90s. Everyone forgets that. The Towers
Wire
was
is
still
early
in the title
2000s
sequence.
too.
Yeah, so maybe I'm a little bit off with the chronology, but she didn't go and do prestige TV. She went and did very mainstream fodder on Fox, is what she did. And then you look at she's voicing a fucking troll now. Trolls, the little dudes with the hair
on the top of the pencil, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They were pencil lids for us. Yeah, that's what she does now. She's a troll.
By the way, I also just want to highlight
this film trolled me for 90 minutes.
Because that's pointed out. Look, even though he got overrated, probably because all the girls were in love with him, Joseph Gordon-Levitt obviously has not only been in some mega movies, Inception, stuff like that, right? But as pointed out in that, he's even done very good acting performances like Brick, like Shimmering Skin, etc. How did that guy deliver this performance? It's mental. He's working with nothing.
I mean, put it. That's how you know it's the script. That's how you know it's the director. He managed to escape this black hole. This was Event Horizon for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, man. It could have gone so bad. Every movie could have been this. It could have just been a procession of terrible, empty, hipster fucking rom-coms. That's what it could have been, but it wasn't. He escaped. He got out. He got out of 500 Days of Summer and went on to do classics such as G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. No, he went on to do Inception. Obviously, he was in the Dark Knight movies.
Yeah, of course.
He was even in that dodgy Sin City sequel, which I just love it because it put another paycheck in Frank Miller's crazy cocaine.
Sequel's not as good, but it's worth watching.
Well, also, I mean, this is like you say, this just actually, and it does the hipster thing of. So, I mean, when you start this film too, like we should talk briefly about the soundtrack. I mean, we've mentioned it a few times, but it does the thing. Well, first off, it starts with Regina Spektor, which has like aged horribly. By the way,
I'd forgotten about that. By the way, and I was just like,
no, as soon I forgot about that, but as soon as the film starts,
you in the face,
and it's just like Regina Spektor, and like I was like, holy shit, I forgot she existed. God damn, I didn't need to be reminded, but she is such of that era of the 2000s and of hipster culture. And then not only that, but you basically get the whole arc of like this hipster culture that cares about the Smiths allegedly. He's wearing the album art, the t-shirt with the album art from Joy Division, Unknown Pleasures. Like there's a bunch of these like really shitty references, but it's so hollow. And I guess it does represent hipster culture in the way that you're kind of superficially listening to this, but not really engaging with it. And you've like weirdly commercialized it. And it now becomes like a symbol of you. Right, which is what all of the music in hipsterdom was. You were basically replacing aspects of a real personality by liking bands. That was the thing to do. But it really treats all of this old music, some of which is very good, in a very hollow manner.
On their own and mega tracks, but he makes them shit. He makes it.
Yes, because that's what hipster culture did to the good music, and then they produce their own music that has just it is aged terribly. Like, I mean, I promise you guys, go listen to Animal Collective now and tell me it's good. Go do it. It was bad at the time, and it is aged miserably.
I hate that he sings the Pixies in this. He sings "Here Comes Your Man," which is obviously like one of the Pixies' big fucking commercial hits off Doolittle.
Surely the Pixies would hate this film. With a passion. I mean, it's everything commercial they despise. Surely,
the joke was they wrote "Here Comes Your Man," and it was like they were taking the piss. It was like they tried to write a song like fucking Tom Petty or someone. It was like it was meant to be a sort of a joke, and they've continually said that the meaning of the song is dark, right? Which is that there's a quote on Wikipedia about it, and it says it's about winos and hobos traveling on the trains who died in the California earthquakes. Now it probably isn't. Right, but he's just taking the piss, obviously, Frank Black. But the reality is that for that song to then be given romantic overtones, and it's a Pixie song, and it was always ironic and everything else, it's like, don't ruin the fucking Pixies, bro. Like, don't ruin the Pixies, man. Like, how you leave me by the end of this movie, leave me something. But like, I mean, these songs, it's like, listen, I'm not a big, like, massive fan of the Smiths from that time period. I would say if I had to pick Smiths or The Cure, I'd take The Cure. No reason why you would ever have to do that, but just letting you know where I'm musically aligned from that time period, right? But it's like it's not even like these are not obscure, like they're not B-sides. Like these songs, everybody knows these songs. Everybody knows these songs. The one they pick Hall and Oates. Hall and Oates, mate. Like Hall and Oates, man. like everyone knows all of their songs. And it's just so crazy. It's like it's a hipster film that was too afraid to even pick genuine hipster music. A lot of the music here is like
at least Garden State just was the Shins only.
Yes,
basically.
correct. Yeah. Like they read the.
I also
assignment,
don't think
right?
the Shins suck for the record. Like they were actually one of the better ones.
What's it? It says in the opening scene where what does it say? And he's got the Joy Division T-shirt on, and he's saying it all. And he also had a love of British bands that wrote songs about love failing. I'm like, Joy Division?
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Fucking Isolation? Dead Souls? What the fuck? It wasn't just that he just was in a fucking room going, man, this girl doesn't like me. He fucking hung himself at an unbelievably young age.
This movie also. They all would.
This movie. They all would. They all would. No, not one of these. Yes. Not one of these artists from like these big bands. Mate, Hall and Oates would say this.
They got Richard. Oh my God, I hadn't even thought of that. I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah. You're right. That's where Monty is right. That none of them understand the music. This main character could never have been someone who listened to Joy Division. You could never be that person and then put that T-shirt on of Unknown Pleasures. There's no way if you enjoyed. Think about if you don't know people like Henry G, the people who like Joy Division. Like, there's no way you'd be this shit character if you actually like Joy Division. Division. It's impossible. You just bought the T-shirt, didn't you? It was on sale or something.
But the
You know what I
idea
mean?
as well, like, it would be a relationship that bums you out and makes you depressed. Like, Ian Curtis is fucking singing about, like he's a prisoner in his own body. He can't stop having horrific epilepsy seizures. Like, he's really got real problems. Like, he's not singing about, like, I like this girl and she's not gonna date me. Like, no, he's singing about fucking the dead souls from all of human history coming back and assaulting his brain and haunting him while he sits there in his early 20s and basically already mortally wounded with some disease he can't control that's bleeding into every aspect of his life, including his art, his relationships, maybe his ability to even survive. It's not the same thing, is it, mate?
But really, Richard, in the end, don't you really need clarification on where this relationship is?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I remember that song quite famously by Ian Curtis. Like, Are We Just Dating by Ian Curtis. Like, Joy Division. Joy Division. Yeah, Joy Division. Are we special friends?
But I think that's what's also horrific about this film is that it just wears the trappings of actual art, but there's nothing underneath it, right? It's disturbing.
It's so inexplicable to me, the popularity. Like, it really is. Like, all the awards, it must have just... I wish I could go back and not be a self-absorbed media twat who was basically desperate to make it in esports for some reason.
Look,
back then. I wish I could get inside what was happening at that time for this type of movie to be good. Because, put it this way, if this movie had come out, like, a couple of years after September 11th or something, you understand that, because it's like, well, not because it's terrible, but you understand it because it's like people just want to feel good again, like Chicago, all them musicals that came out. Makes sense, right? And then, but I'm thinking, like, 2009 was like, it had the fucking subprime mortgage fucking...
Yes, it was right after
around that time.
It was right after that. That was late 2008.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, kind of feels like this movie's divorced from reality in a way I can't even process now. Because, like, the average experience for people at that moment in time was, do I get to keep my house? Maybe that is why the movie was successful. Maybe it was the antidote to a lot of that angst. Maybe it could only have been successful after a global recession, the likes of which has never been seen since the 20s. Maybe that is the only vector for success for this film.
I feel like that's the response, though, that you get to Chicago that was released after September 11th, right? Because Chicago is definitely a piece of its time. Because there's no way that should have won Best Picture.
Musical.
It's terrible.
No,
it's terrible.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I mean, even if you like musicals, it is badly cast for a musical.
Oh yeah. I mean, but like that's what I mean. I just can't understand the praise from the media is like ubiquitous and glowing. Like there are so many like credible movie critics that were enamored with this film, and I think because we're getting to the end now, but I think honestly. It has to be that there was something baked in this movie that just appealed to like the media twats, the journalist class. I
will tell you that as I do hate this subculture, and I do hate this like period of millennial history. But Richard, this not only did this culture, but this film appealed to these people at the time, right? Yeah. They saw themselves reflected in it in a non-negative way somehow. And so if you were, a college educated person or in college when this came out, this could in fact appear cool to you. That's what I think. And then now people have nostalgia for it for whatever reason.
I will say shout out to Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal. His quote was, "It is synthetic and derivative." Synthetic is a great word for this film, actually.
Yep.
A movie that's popping with perceptions while searching for a style. That's exactly right. And I mean, listen, NPR said it was actually they actually said it was a thoroughly conservative affair. I don't know what
Jesus
they were.
Christ.
Don't know what they were watching, but they said for all its rhetorical whimsy and hipster dressing, Days of Summer is a thoroughly conservative affair, as culturally and romantically status quo as any Jennifer Aniston vehicle.
I think they're just referring to the ending where it just goes back to traditional marriage, which isn't. It's not an unfair critique.
And we're right back to it. It's a movie that satisfies nobody. The type of hipster twat that could have been into it is betrayed at the end, you know?
In a meta-contextual comment on both the film and this episode, I think this has gone on long enough. Let's end it.
It's over. Unfortunately, this episode is now longer than the actual movie, but I think we did a better.
It's better though. It's way more entertaining.
I think it's better. It's more entertaining. Hopefully, it's more insightful about why this movie sucked and the history behind it, as well as our personal histories during this time period and with this film. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed this. That'll conclude our spit roast arc. We'll be back next week for Moneyshot with Jurassic Park. See you then.